Some stories don't just make headlines, they create legends. Meghan Markle's journey from Hollywood to the royal family has been painted as a fairy tale, but whispers from her past tell a much darker story. And now, with shocking details revealed by her ex-husband Trevor Engelson, the picture looks very different.
He has now revealed that that information came direct from Meghan's ex-husband, Trevor Engelson, via an intermediary.
Planned from the beginning. She denied being interested in the royal family, which she totally was. I know someone who knows the ex-husband who said she had a vision board with Prince Harry.
When Meghan Markle first stepped onto the royal stage, the world was quick to embrace her as a fresh, modern face for the monarchy. But behind that polished image, insiders claim there was a different Meghan, a woman who had been carefully planning her next chapter long before Prince Harry came along. According to those close to her ex-husband, Trevor Engelson, Meghan wasn't simply swept away by love. She may have been steering her life toward royalty with deliberate intent. One of the most striking claims is that Meghan kept a vision board featuring Prince Harry. On paper, that sounds like a harmless dream, the kind many people might joke about. But critics argue it paints a different picture, one where her royal romance wasn't fate, but part of a long-term ambition. Meghan herself always denied having any special interest in the royal family, yet those whispers suggest otherwise. For detractors, this isn't just a small inconsistency. It's the first sign of a carefully crafted strategy. Trevor Engelson, a Hollywood producer who once knew Meghan more intimately than anyone else, has reportedly been a silent figure in much of her story. But now, through intermediaries, his insights are surfacing. And what they reveal is a Meghan skilled at managing not just her career, but her image, relationships, and future. This sets the stage for one of the most intriguing debates around Meghan Markle. Was she simply ambitious and determined, like countless others in Hollywood? Or did she take things a step further, carefully designing a future that would eventually place her at the heart of one of the world's oldest institutions?
Absolutely fascinating for people like me and you who have followed the story for a long time. Obviously, we know that Meghan Markle did plan this, but what is new in terms of Meghan Kelly's revelation is that it is
To truly understand Meghan's rise, we have to rewind to the years before Windsor Castle ever entered the picture, her time in Toronto. On screen, she was Rachel Zane in Suits, the ambitious paralegal who became a fan favorite. But off-screen, Meghan was navigating a very different role, one that insiders say showcased her ability to live a dual life. Toronto was more than just a filming location. It became Meghan's playground, especially within the exclusive walls of Soho House, a private members club where celebrities, executives, and power brokers mingled behind closed doors. According to those who followed her closely, this was where Meghan learned to master the art of networking, positioning herself in circles that opened doors far beyond acting. The whispers about her time in Toronto often describe her as a skilled host, someone who could not only light up a room but also control the atmosphere. In public, she gave polished speeches about charity and humanitarian causes. In private, she cultivated spaces where influential people felt both entertained and protected from scrutiny. This balance between the public humanitarian and the private socialite, critics argue, became Meghan's greatest strength and perhaps her greatest danger. It was also in Toronto, during 2016, that a mysterious night allegedly unfolded. Fans and commentators claim that this one evening almost derailed Meghan's royal path before it began. The details remain vague, the evidence scarce, but the whispers have never disappeared. Some even believe that the palace worked behind the scenes to bury what could have been a career-ending scandal.
Get enough of herself while she simultaneously plays the victim. My castle's too small. Yeah. The queen is mean.
The so-called Toronto Night of 2016 has become one of the most mysterious and debated episodes in Meghan Markle's story. According to whispers online and royal commentators, something happened that evening, which could have changed everything. The rumors don't point to an arrest or a scandal splashed across front pages, but rather to a close call so risky that palace aides may have scrambled to cover it up before it reached daylight. Some fans claim Meghan was seen slipping into Soho House after midnight, during visits when Prince Harry was also in Toronto. Others suggest the private club acted as a secret refuge, where Harry felt free from paparazzi pressure while enjoying a lifestyle hidden from palace eyes. In this version of events, Meghan wasn't just hosting parties, she was curating spaces where Harry could indulge, while she positioned herself as the one person who could manage his wild side. What made the night even more intriguing was the whispered mention of Princess Eugenie's name. No evidence has ever connected her to wrongdoing, but the idea that Harry's cousin could have been nearby added a dangerous edge. Royal watchers began to ask, was Eugenie's later loyalty to Meghan rooted in friendship or in shared secrets? Critics argue that the total absence of records, paparazzi photos, or leaked reports from that night is suspicious. After all, Harry's every move had been tracked for years. How could an entire evening disappear without a trace? For those who believe the story, the silence is louder than any headline, and it hints at powerful strings being pulled. To grasp why the Toronto whispers matter so much, you have to look at the contradictions that have always surrounded Meghan Markle's story. From the beginning, her public image and her private actions never fully matched. Supporters saw her as a hardworking actress and humanitarian, while critics pointed to inconsistencies that suggested something more calculated. One example comes from her own interviews. Meghan once said she had never Googled Prince Harry before meeting him, claiming she went into the relationship with no preconceived ideas. Yet in another interview, she described knowing specific details about his life and preferences. Similarly, she told stories of being isolated and trapped in the UK, even as travel records showed frequent trips to Italy, Amsterdam, and New York. For critics, these weren't harmless slips. They were cracks in a carefully curated image. Even Meghan's official royal biography came under scrutiny. At first, it listed impressive credentials, from double majors to multilingual skills. But over time, those details were quietly erased, leaving only the most basic description, Meghan Markle, actress from Suits. The changes fueled speculation that either Meghan had exaggerated her accomplishments or the palace was trying to distance itself from a narrative that couldn't be verified. For Trevor Engelson, these contradictions were nothing new. As her ex-husband, he had reportedly seen firsthand how Meghan could reinvent herself to fit different roles and audiences. To him, the Meghan the world was only beginning to question was already familiar. And that's why his perspective, emerging now through intermediaries, is so powerful. He represents a version of Meghan that predates the palace, the press, and the polished fairy tale. One story that continues to resurface when people question Meghan Markle's image is her 2011 wedding to Trevor Engelson in Jamaica. At the time, it was seen as a lively, unconventional celebration. But years later, details from that wedding have been re-examined, casting a different light on Meghan's character. Guests reportedly remembered not the vows or the romance, but Meghan rolling joints for her friends, some say as many as 100. Back then, the behavior was dismissed as quirky fun, the kind of lighthearted moment you'd expect at a relaxed Caribbean wedding. Yet now, critics interpret it as something deeper. A glimpse of Meghan's ability to control a social atmosphere and position herself as the central figure in it. This anecdote has become symbolic. It's not just about marijuana or partying. It's about Meghan's skill in shaping the mood of a room, crafting an environment where she held power. For her supporters, this shows she was charismatic, confident, and capable of bringing people together. For her detractors, it's evidence of a pattern. Meghan wasn't merely participating in social scenes, she was orchestrating them, always ensuring she was at the center of attention. Fast forward to her Toronto years, and the same pattern appears. Soho House, the private club where Meghan often spent time, was less about celebrity cocktails and more about influence. Insiders suggest Meghan had mastered the art of balancing two identities: the public figure who gave eloquent speeches about charity, and the private host who ensured the night never ended. According to Trevor's circle, Meghan always knew how to provide people with what they wanted while keeping the details buried. That ability to curate and conceal is exactly why the Toronto Whispers strike such a chord. If Meghan was willing to control her narrative in Hollywood and among friends, could she have applied the same strategies when stepping into the royal spotlight? Critics say yes, and point to the wedding anecdote as the first glimpse of a long-term pattern. It wasn't just harmless fun. It was practice for something much bigger, mastering the art of reinvention, while making sure inconvenient truths disappeared in the shadows. By the time Meghan Markle entered royal life, her story was already filled with contradictions, edits, and unanswered questions. But what made those inconsistencies so powerful wasn't just the rumors themselves, it was the silence that followed them. In a world where Prince Harry's every move had been photographed for years, critics asked, how could entire nights in Toronto vanish without a single picture, headline, or leak? Commentators have argued that the absence of evidence is itself suspicious. One former paparazzo even told Page Six that in Toronto nightlife, if there are no photos, no noise, that usually means someone wanted it buried. That's why whispers of a palace cover-up began to circulate. Theories claimed that aides, fully aware of Harry's fragile reputation after the infamous Las Vegas incident, worked behind the scenes to make sure no scandal attached itself to Meghan before the engagement. For critics, this was the closest Meghan came to losing it all before she even had it. At the same time, Meghan's defenders painted a completely different picture. They argued that these stories were nothing more than recycled gossip designed to discredit her. On Instagram and Twitter, supporters pointed to her humanitarian work, her charity efforts, and her ability to connect with causes around the world. She built schools, one viral post argued. Why would she risk it all for a party? For fans, the very fact that no evidence existed was proof that nothing inappropriate had happened. But detractors countered with examples from her past. They brought up the wedding joint anecdote, the friends who mysteriously disappeared from her inner circle, and the contradictions in her interviews. They pointed to the way details of her biography had been erased from palace websites, suggesting a pattern of selective storytelling. In their view, Meghan wasn't unfairly targeted. She was simply playing a long game of image management. What makes this debate so enduring is that both sides see the same silence and interpret it differently. For one group, silence means innocence. For the other, silence is the loudest clue of all. And it's that tension, the absence of proof but the persistence of rumor, that keeps the Toronto night alive as one of the most fascinating chapters in Meghan's story. The most striking part of Meghan Markle's story isn't necessarily what has been revealed. It's what remains hidden. Every time one chapter of her life is examined, another layer of contradictions and reinventions appears. For many observers, Meghan is a woman who never simply joined an environment. She curated it, reshaped it, and ensured she remained at the center of it. That strategy worked in Hollywood, it worked in Toronto, and eventually, it worked in the heart of the British monarchy. Trevor Engelson's perspective adds weight to this interpretation. As the man who lived with Meghan before the fame, before the palace, he reportedly saw a version of her that the public only glimpses through scattered anecdotes. For him, the woman the world now debates was already familiar, ambitious, strategic, and skilled at reinventing herself when the situation demanded it. Their marriage may have collapsed, but his silence, and now the whispers attributed to him, have become part of the mystery fueling Meghan's larger story. The pattern is clear: build, erase, rebuild. Meghan's early biographies were edited down. Friends from her past seemed to vanish, and inconvenient narratives dissolved in silence. Supporters call this resilience, an ability to adapt and survive in hostile environments. Critics call it manipulation, an endless rewriting of history to protect her image. Either way, it ensures that Meghan remains at the center of global fascination. This fascination isn't just cultural, it's financial. From Netflix contracts to Spotify deals, Meghan and Harry's brand power rises and falls with public trust in their story. Every time old whispers resurface, investors and media houses take notice. A single rumor can shake reputations, stall projects, or reignite debates about the couple's authenticity. That's why the so-called Toronto night continues to matter. It isn't about whether the whispers are true. It's about how the possibility alone shapes perception. And that's the irony. Meghan Markle's power lies not only in what she reveals, but in what she withholds. The unanswered questions, the gaps in her timeline, the contradictions between her words and actions, they all keep people talking. Was she the humanitarian, the Hollywood climber, the royal outsider, or all of the above? Perhaps we'll never know for certain. But one thing is clear, Meghan's story proves that sometimes it's not the headlines that define you, it's the shadows that refuse to disappear.